So here's a list of the power conferences. This is not anything earth-shattering, but just to kind of put things in perspective, here are the teams that have won the power conferences over just the last 3 years. A list that has Michigan, Alabama, and now Utah. These are Pac-12 titles for them that have won more than one. Then there's a long list including Baylor, K-State, and Texas, who won it in the Big 12 last year. And it kind of it's just 3 years. But when I saw the list, I'm thinking, where's Oklahoma? Where's Ohio State? But it doesn't mean that they're in any kind of a drought. For them it is. But it's just a list of those who have won a power conference championship, a conference championship, since the last 3 years. And like TCU's not on there because, remember, they lost to Kansas State that play at the goal line with Duggan. But just to kind of start off the show, who among them? Michigan's not favored to win the Big Ten. Alabama's not favored to win the SEC. Utah, among all of them, has right now more momentum about winning what would be a third in the last 4 years. And then Florida State, Georgia in that mix, Texas too.
I would say Utah, Florida State, Georgia, and Kansas State and Texas on this list would be tops in their leagues as far as predictions go, for who will win the league. Washington's not going to be on the top of anybody's list. I think anybody in the world knows anything about Pitt, including Pitt right now. They've got to see it, from their team. So, yeah, I mean, Clemson is picked second in the ACC, but I see more people picking Miami to win over Florida State than I see picking Clemson right now.
Yeah, I love Brett. Just 3 years, just random. Tomorrow's gonna be 4 years. I don't know, but it just seems kind of random. But for the sake of the conversation here, your question was who's not going to be on this list. Is that what you said?
Yeah, no. Who among them? Well, two ways. Who among them that is listed has a chance to win another one that's a part of this list for the last 3 years? Just kind of a random list, but I would like Utah, Florida State, and perhaps Georgia / Texas are the ones favored to win their conferences this year.
Yeah, I don't expect Michigan to make it 4 in a row. There's still a good football team there just because they lost a lot and lost their coach. I know there's a lot of faith in Sharon Moore, but I wouldn't bank on them, especially with the new additions, in making that 4 straight. Alabama, I think they're going to be pretty good, but I don't know that I'd have them winning the SEC per se. I think, yeah, so, I mean, as far as the teams that I think could repeat this, I think Utah is a sound choice to do so. I think Georgia, obviously, is a fair bet to win. Kansas State would be good money to go and jump on right now as well. I'm not buying Texas winning the SEC at the moment. I'm not ready to go there. I think they're going to be very good, but I'm not buying that. So, yeah, I'd say K-State, Georgia, Utah all look like they could definitely repeat. Clemson or Florida State, I think, similar boat. So, yeah. And then the rest of them I don't have as much faith in.
All right. Now, this is a note. We don't have a graphic or anything, but this is an email that I received from Bobby, our good friend Bobby Thornton, in Myrtle Beach. He watches us all the time. He's a huge West Virginia fan. Remember the edge, the chip on the shoulder that Neal Brown had last summer at Big 12 Media Days? Well, he has another chip. ESPN had come out with the top 100 players of the year, players for this year, and Neal Brown was upset about it, and basically questioned the ESPN writer, who did not include anyone from West Virginia. And he said it's like they didn't even get to the W's when it comes to the alphabet of checking on teams. Now, he was basically referring to, I think, Garrett Green. If you did a top 100, and Green has gotten a little bit more attention, but if you did a top 100, do you think, honestly, that Garrett Green would be in your top 100 to start the year? We're talking everybody. Every guards, defensive tackles, cornerbacks.
I mean, he would be about my 12th or 13th quarterback max, I think. Maybe even a little bit lower. I mean, he's a top 20 quarterback in the country. I'm confident in saying that, in my opinion. But, when you start talking about, who are the of 100, there might be 14 left tackles on there that are all really good this year. And this is actually a really, really good year for running backs. Across the Big 12 alone should show you that. But really good year for running backs. So I don't know if he'd be in my top 100. That would be tough. I mean, he wouldn't be too far out of it, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I admire Neal Brown sticking up for his team and his players. I think, that's what you want your head coach to do. This was on the Marty and McGee podcast.
On ESPN, the SEC network.
Yeah, the SEC, same thing, ESPN. And so, yeah, that was interesting to see him come out once again and kind of have to defend the program because he's just had to do that so often, it seems like, over the last couple of years. I understand where he's coming from. I mean, Garrett Green's a really good player. I do think he's a bit undervalued, but I think you're kind of splitting hairs when you're talking about top 100 because, whose list are we talking about? Are we talking about somebody that's really going to, recognize offensive linemen in there and other positions that aren't the skill spots? Are we talking about, the top 100 list and it's mostly, skill guys because that's what everybody recognizes and can better determine? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I know he's not trying to look that deep into it. Just on the surface, I think it's probably pretty close. I think if you looked at the Big 12 alone, is he a top 5 quarterback?
Within the conference?
Within the Big 12.
Well, that's what I mean. Within the conference, I would say he would be
He's borderline top 5. I'm sure somebody's like, no, absolutely. He's number 3 or something like that. But, I think there's a conversation there alone. So if you spread that out, and I think it's fair to say there's probably 15 other quarterbacks at least, adding all the positions. Yeah, I think you're probably cutting it close. I don't think it's super disrespectful, but I understand what Neal Brown's doing. And let's face it, man, these coaches are doing anything they can and everything they can to motivate their players. So, the disrespect gets put under a different type of microscope. I'm sure he saw that, and probably part of him really didn't care that much, and part of him was excited that he can now complain about this and use it to fuel Garrett Green and the rest of this football team. So I think that's part of the reaction here, but I also think it is just a constant situation of West Virginia as a whole just sort of is there for a lot of people, and that goes for the Big 12, that goes for nationally. And so, yeah, I think they're probably a bit fed up because they were a good football team last year, and he's a really good player. But, top 100, I don't know. You'd have to sit down and really make a list, but I do understand hhis angle here completely. And Garrett Green, I do think, is going to surprise some people this season.
I look forward to seeing what he does. He's just a gritty dude. And when I say that, then a guy plays hard. No, he plays hard, he's gritty, but he's also fun to watch and a hell of a player. Pat McAfee saying, and I'm not going to use all of his words here, he's a West Virginia alum, of course. I'll tell you what, if you're in the Big 12, it's time to start blanking your pants. This is a new blanking Neal Brown. We're about to blanking run the Big 12.
Well, that's very McAfee. And look, I don't think that they're one of the teams that you would not have to, outside of the top 3 favorites, I can buy them winning it just as easy as I can buy most anybody outside of Kansas State, Utah, maybe Kansas, because it's going to be so weird in their schedule. And I think if they do win that game against Penn State, that chip on their shoulder is going to get really big, and they're really going to start have some confidence and momentum that they haven't had before, and they can charge through. But again, we'll see. They've got to do it 2 years in a row. And if this works for Neal Brown and his guys, then it works. So more power to them.
Yeah, I think part of the reason, at least myself, is not putting them in the Big 12 championship game is their schedule. I just think that they have one of the tougher schedules out there. It's not disrespect to West Virginia. It's not disrespect to Garrett Green. It's that I just think they have a tougher schedule than Kansas, than Kansas State, than Utah, teams that you could say are arguably already better than them on paper. And that's an opinion, of course, but they also have much easier schedules in some cases. So that's not a disrespect thing. That's just I'm being smart with what I'm looking at here and trying to pick the best odds of who's probably going to get here. But there's plenty of room for that reason for, West Virginia to once again feel disrespected. I do think, though, guys, hasn't he set them up where they better go win this year?
Oh, no.
Because the whole complaining about not getting respect, and last year you proved people wrong, and granted, you proved people wrong, but there comes a point now where you're complaining again. And okay, like if you go out there and you do it again, then yeah, people need to just give you that respect, and that needs to be, you know, a starting point that's just there out of respect for what they've done on the field for a couple of years. But I also think Neal Brown's got to be careful of, like, you don't want to be the guy that's complaining all the time. You know what I mean? Even though I'm sure a lot of it is like what we mentioned with this top 100 list. It's just fuel for his players and for his team. You're disrespected. Nobody believes in you. They all think you suck. They picked you last in the Big 12 last year. They picked you middle of the pack this year. No one, I think that's a lot of this. I also think there is a genuine, like I said earlier, an overlooking of West Virginia, just in general, from the conference level to the national level, that they're sick and tired of. And so, you know what? Like any problem that we have when we're talking about conferences or whatever it is, go out there and win. They did that last year. They go out there and do it again. Then I think he's going to have enough skins on the wall that people are going to maybe adjust their opinion on West Virginia. But if you don't go out and win, then it's going to just fall on deaf ears. So
that's a move called the Kirby.
Yes.
We call it the Kirby.
Oh, Kirby Smart. When
yes.
Like nobody believed in us against TCU, and they beat them 65-7. Nobody believed in you. What?
That was completely bupkis.
They were playing the Transformers.
Yeah. Neal Brown has a legitimate reason. Like, they had the wrong colors at Big 12 Media Day on one of the backdrops. They didn't have – what was the other thing?
Picked last in the conference.
They picked him last in the conference. So, I mean, he's got actual reasons as opposed to Kirby Smart, which was very clearly 100% just manufacturing drama and an arch enemy to fuel his troops. But there's a little bit of both going on with Neal Brown, and that's one of the teams that, like Paul said a minute ago, I think they could be in the Big 12 championship game at the end of the year. I do. If things fall the right way for them, I think Garrett Green's good enough to lead them there. I think they got enough around him to be able to be in the mix. But it's such an unknown wild card of a conference that, not much is going to surprise me, I don't think, at the end of the year, outside of like a Houston BYU championship game or something. I think everybody else has got such an opportunity as well that, it's hard not to disrespect somebody because there's like 12 teams that could play for a title,
I think that there are, and I would probably bet, I'm not a gambler by any means, but I would say that if you listed like that upper 6 to 8 teams in the Big 12, that one of them would make the Big 12 championship game on the bottom part of that upper 6 or 8, I wouldn't blink on that. I think that could happen because we've seen it happen even when they had Texas and Oklahoma in the conference. Okay, the Dylan Raoila, this is one of those like Jalen Daniels was named the starting quarterback at Kansas, basically because he's cleared healthy, everything's good. And Dylan Raoila, the 5-star freshman quarterback at Nebraska, has been named the starter for their game against UTEP. As a Nebraska fan, I know that he had to earn the job. You just don't walk in. That doesn't mean he's going to be their savior. But I really never thought there was much of a competition, with all due respect to others who are on the roster. And so, is he the savior? I'll see it when I believe it, but he's a hell of a player. He gets the start against UTEP.
So I saw a lot of people yesterday saying he's wearing 15 like Patrick Mahomes.
No.
But at Nebraska,
no, that's Tommy Frazier.
That's Tommy Frazier. Let's remember, they don't retire numbers, obviously.
I don't know what they do. I really don't know their history of what they do. I'm sure they have some sort of a Hall of Fame like a lot of people do, but I don't know about the – no, you're right, because Tommy Frazier's or 20 Johnny Rogers or whoever.
If you told me a number that they would like – if you pick one number in the history of Nebraska that I personally – and this is obviously my generation – that you would say that no one would ever wear again, I would say 15.
Yeah, and you wonder – I don't know what he wore in high school. Haven't followed him that much, but Dylan Raoila, the start against UTEP, which is not this weekend, but next. The Earl.
That's exciting for Nebraska fans. I mean, he's the savior, so to speak, and a lot of hype surrounding that young man. So don't think, there was really much of a competition when all was said and done. I think this was sort of the foregone conclusion that most people came to the moment he arrived in Lincoln, honestly. And so here he is, and we'll see if he's as advertised pretty quickly, but it obviously is not going to be a situation where he's a finished product by the end of this year, but it's going to be very exciting to see him debut for Big Red, and very interesting to see where that all lands by the end of the year and where Nebraska is after year 2 of Matt Rule. It's a very important year for them. I mean, he's not on a hot seat by any means, but I do think you just want to see how they build off of a year ago, and sort of where they fall in this new Big Ten. But yeah, that definitely adds an element of excitement that was kind of already percolating, but is now very much out there for Nebraska fans. So that's cool for them.
The Earl Campbell Tyler Rose Award watch list was released today. 90-plus players' names are on this list, and I sent Garrett a nearly impossible task. There is the list of all of the players within the Big 12. We're going to also have a notables list to kind of give you an idea, but there are the names. Go down, there's the former Baylor tight end, now Drake Dabney at TCU. There's everybody on the list, everyone but Josh Kelly and also DeQuan Finn played high school football in the state of Texas, or you have to be a part of a Division I school inside the state of Texas. So, Craig, they kind of went through this, right? That they were trying to maybe tweak the eligibility of who could be a nominee, and they were trying to make it even more Texas based on either you were from Texas or you played at a Texas school. This was you played high school football in Texas, correct?
Yeah, I think it was just it's been 10 years of the award, and it's just trying to make it a situation where there's more clarity for people to understand, because previously there was this whole line for the award about like you played your high school football in Texas, or you played JUCO in Texas, or you played your college. It was kind of wordy to just be blunt about it, and I think a little confusing. So this is very clear cut. You graduated from high school in Texas, or you're playing at a Texas school. Is that pretty clear? Mm-hmm. So everybody on this list, as you mentioned, played high school football in Texas. They're from Texas. They're eligible for the award. That goes for anybody at any school in Division I in America. So on offense. So if you're an offensive player, O-lineman or quarterback, and you went to South Lake Carroll or you went to Mexia, then you're eligible for this award if you played a D1 school. Or the only other qualification is you play currently in Texas. So that's why DeQuan Finn's on there, because he plays at Baylor, and Max Duggan was eligible for it when he played at TCU, or Bijan when he was at Texas. Those guys would all be eligible. So yeah, you either played at Texas University or you played Texas high school football and graduated, and that's it. That's pretty clear cut. And so that's what this list is the nominations from those schools who put forth a nomination. And you mentioned it's like 90 people. Well, there's a lot of Texas talent out there, and I think that's evident every year when this award rolls around, and is evident at the end of the year as well with the finalists that are always a very strong group, and usually like 1 or 2 or 3/4 of the Heisman on certain years, depending on what year we're talking about. So, yeah, you went to high school in Texas, or you play college ball in Texas. It's that simple. Some guys do both. That's what Earl did, and so that's kind of the emphasis of it. So, yeah, it's a Texas-based award.
All right, here are the notable names. Now, you saw, like, Taj Brooks, obviously, on there. We don't know exactly what kind of a year you might get from Finn, but there's Ollie Gordon. There's some names, Shedeur Sanders, names that could have monster years statistically. And then look at the notables, including a lot of these are quarterbacks, including some, again, there's Drones and Zeno on that list, former Baylor quarterbacks. Milroe, Damian Martinez, there's Quinn Ewers. These are players who are on the list as far as the watch list. Some can come and go. I thought it was cool that Alex Orji, the Michigan quarterback out of Saxe, there's Preston Stone, Cam Ward, Wigman, quarterback at A&M, and also Zeno at the end. So those are the notables that are not a part of the Big 12, but wanted to make sure we included their names. 90-plus names, at least for now, to start the watch list for the Earl Campbell Tyler Rose Award.
I'm trying to think if California, Florida, and Ohio had this same kind of award, like who would be the born in Texas, played high school football, or born and stayed there, like who would have the same kind of Earl credentials. And I've been thinking about it for like the last 5 minutes, just trying to invent one from Florida, and maybe Dion or Emmitt Smith, I think, would be like the award.
Dion from Escambia, right?
Dion's from North Fort Myers.
I'm talking about Emmitt.
Emmitt, yeah, from Escambia High School, yeah. Emmitt, like that would be it. But it's even hard to like. Okay, like those two make sense, right?
I bet Ohio has 8 to 10 names.
Ohio, California would be
I mean, they'd have plenty.
Yeah, plenty. I'm trying to think.
Like
Marcus,
John Elway or
Marcus
whatever.
Allen,
They'd have plenty. I mean, the thing, like the reason to kind of tighten it up was the JUCO thing. It just didn't factor in enough to, and it's too hard to track.
Yeah.
Like most JUCOs don't even keep their website updated. You know what I mean? Much less trying to figure out where they came from and the transfer portal. And so like that part of it got eliminated because it needed to be clarified a little bit. And the born-in was a debate. The whole thing, though, is like if you were born here, but you didn't go to high school here and you didn't play Texas, like how Texas, you know what I mean? Like, were you a military? So it just gets too into the weeds. So just to clear it up, it's like, hey, you played high school ball here, you played college ball here, boom, boom. Maybe you did both. That's pretty clear, and that's a hell of a list. I mean, that's definitely about 20 names there that you could all see being conference players of the year, and there's probably 10 to 15 of those names that you could see being in New York for the Heisman, or maybe not 15, but I mean. You look at that list. There's about 10 guys you could see in Heisman territory at the end of the year.
I said that this might be the best list of finalists that they have, and they've had some really good ones. But this could be like the mother lode when you get down to the end. Hopefully, everybody has a big year. Everyone stays healthy, and at the end, you could have yourself some dudes now, alphas, on that list at the banquet at the start of the year. All right, so there we are with that. By the way, we have Brett McMurphy today. I haven't brought that up. We also have Dan Lyons, who writes for Athlon's Magazine. Also today, Chris Houston. He runs the Heisman Pundit, and he is a podcast every week with the Heisman Trophy. He did one, in fact, launched one, put it out there today with Pat Forty, looking at the Heisman Trophy and the possibility of looking at maybe how they might tweak it or change it or just talking about the history of it. Kelly Quinlan, as I mentioned, joins us from Dublin, Ireland. And J.J. Joe, Baylor radio and former quarterback, will join us today in the 5 o'clock hour. All right, so we got that. There is, what else do we have, Garrett?
The Big 12 Senior Bowl.
All right, now, the Senior Bowl released their watch list. This is, again, everyone's been doing that for the last 2 or 3 weeks. And this is how the teams, look at the list of the teams. Utah, Arizona, Colorado, UCF, Arizona State, and then also Kansas, all with double digit. Now, you might have somebody with 6 now that eventually might have 12 because, again, this is fluid. Jim Nagy runs this, the Reese's Senior Bowl, but the Big 12, those are the names or the numbers next to each school that have candidates, at least for now, to play in what is a very highly rated and a huge week in Senior Bowl in Mobile, Alabama, when the NFL coaches are hands-on and right there with them.
Yeah, I don't think it's a surprise that the teams that have the most watch people for the Senior Bowl are the ones who either have the most transfers in Colorado, the guys trying to make their last big pull, or Utah, UCF, Arizona, Arizona State, but like Arizona has a ton of transfers. Some of those guys up towards the top of the list. A little surprised that Kansas State only has 6, but if you think about it, it's a pretty darn young team right now that he's got.
The Pac-12 newcomers are certainly providing a lot of potential NFL ammo. I think that's an area that you start to wonder about what that looks like moving forward with all the consolidation, and you see those trackers like with every other event now in college football, from TV ratings to like NIL money or whatever. Like everything's a contest now or a graphic, and I think that's no different than when you get around to the NFL draft, right? And you see the players by conference and all that. And I think the Big 12 has been woefully underrepresented, and that's their own fault. Like that's nobody's fault but their own when it comes to the NFL draft. I think this past year was a little bit better, but some of that was Texas not being all that loaded at times. And this past year they had a huge class, but it just wasn't consistent. Oklahoma was pretty consistent year in and year out with a handful of guys, if not a couple handful of guys. But overall, I think the conference, has been towards the rear of, producing NFL talents. Although the biggest NFL talent in the world right now is from Texas Tech. But this is a year where I think maybe you could see that number bump up a little bit, and certainly that could occur as a result of the new teams you brought in. Looking at those numbers from the former Pac schools there, that's a lot of potential Senior Bowl guys, 30 plus alone just from 3 programs. So if that pans out, and that's a big if, then yeah, maybe you're starting to get a little bit more NFL draft attention, which would always be a good thing.
All right, Colorado, of course, there's a lot of debate about who they are, what they will end up doing. There are some national analysts that feel like they could play for the Big 12 title. This is from BetMGM. A bettor put down $10,000 on Colorado to win the Big 12 title. It's plus 2,500 right now. If he wins or she wins, would equal 250 grand. Will they collect any money?
No.
Well, that wasn't very nice.
No, I'm just like, this is not a team that's ready to compete for the conference title. They need to be ready to compete to get in a bowl game and have a winning record.
What's it like to have that kind of money where you could just blow it if they don't win, if they don't make it? You just have that kind of money to bet.
Well, I would imagine people that do that also have those where they've bet 20,000 and they don't win that, and so it's just the cycle. So yeah, I think there's those moments where you're like, that'd be really fun when you hear about the winning, and then there's like the other 300 days of the year where you're like, it's probably not as fun. I don't know. That's not every tale of every gambler, but that is the tale of some, to be sure. So in this person's case, I don't know, but it seems like a smart bet if you got the money. 10 for 250,000. I mean, if you got 10,000 to just throw away. This seems like a safe bet to do that because I don't think Colorado's like that far off, honestly. They got arguably the best quarterback in the league. That's an argument that can be had, and you can come on the other side of that and have a very stern and clear and concise argument for Shedeur being the best quarterback in the league. I think they've got some good weapons around him. It's not just him and Travis Hunter. They really did load up on D-line. I was watching an interview with Warren Sapp, I don't know if he's the only GA in America that does interviews, but he was basically the D-line coach the way the interview was going. And he seems very fired up about the guys that are there in that room. Now, on the other side of the line, is the offensive line any better? That's the big question. Just like it is with Baylor and just like it is with plenty of other teams out there, just like other teams have quarterback questions or whatnot. We need to see that O-line, but if that O-line's better, I'm not saying they're going to be in the Big 12 title game, but because there's not this round-robin schedule, if things fall the right way, I don't think it's impossible. And if you've got 10,000 to burn, then I don't know. It seems like as fair of a bet as any to make because I don't think it's completely out of the question.
When I used to go and back when I lived in East Texas, we would go to Shreveport with the Louisiana Downs, and there would always be like a media day where they'd have all the spread with all the food, and they would wine and dine us and stuff, and we would do interviews, and then occasionally go there just to go there. I would always, whether I had much money or not, I would always put, even if it was the minimum bet, on the long shot in every race, whether it was $1 or not, $10 or $5, because if you hit it one time, during the time you're there for one day, you're going to make some money. One time. Now, you could also every time be wrong, but it was worth to me the risk to put down money on the 50 or 100 to 1 shot.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. It's also like playing slots, right? Yeah, the little for the hopefully the most. But yeah, I mean, that makes sense. And I'm certainly not a gambling guy. I do think it's a long shot, and that's why you'd get $250,000 for $10,000. Because I think particularly, the thing with Colorado is not disrespect to Dion. It's questions about the line and questions about the defense. And I also think it's very fair to look at their schedule and go, damn, like that second half in particular is pretty brutal. Like they play pretty much every ranked team in the Big 12 in like the last 5 or 6 games of the season. I mean, K-State and Utah and Arizona. Right. And now all those teams aren't going to necessarily be in those spots when that time rolls around. But on paper, I think that's one of the big, like, I don't know about Colorado because of the questions you have personnel-wise, but then also like who they're going to, like the way the schedule sits. But yeah, I mean, that seems like a worthy bet.
They have, and look, TV's going to love this because they'll have Shedeur at, and this is a non-conference game, but Shedeur at Dylan Raoila, who's, the highly touted player. They'll have Shedeur against DeQuan Finn, Shedeur against KJ Jefferson, Shedeur against Avery Johnson, Noah Fafita, Cam Rising, Jalen Daniels, and Dr. Alan Bowman.
Yeah.
So they have
Professor
Alan Bowman. So they have a really tough schedule. Their 2 easiest Big 12 games are Baylor and Cincinnati, and then the middle of the road Big 12 games are UCF and Tech, both teams that, if things turn their way, could
win
those
8-9.
At? What?
Where are they at?
They're at UCF and they're at Tech.
Okay, well, we know UCF can be not that they haven't played in front of some pretty harsh crowds or whatever, but as far as that's man, you were rattling off a bunch of quarterbacks that they will play. That means those teams are going to play Shedeur.
They play
and
Shedeur,
Colorado,
but like
too,
these
yeah.
are good matchups. So they're like him being the best quarterback is not necessarily the trump card that they need it to be given the schedule that they have, because he's not playing anybody who's so far beneath him most of those games that, you know, it's not like, well, and they almost lost to Stanford, but when they were playing Stanford last year, there's a gap between him and the Stanford quarterback. Here in this, like that when you do the like what's better is almost a push in a lot of these games. You know, because there's really good quarterbacks in the Big 12, and he might be the best one, but I don't think, you know, Avery Johnson or Cam Rising or any of those guys are all that far behind either. And those teams might be better off developed in other spots than Colorado is. That's why I say, yeah, I think they could very easily go 6-6 or 7-5 this year, and it wouldn't shock me. But if they're 10-2, 9-3, and contending for the conference title,
And Cowboys will hire Dion.
yeah,
No, Shador's probably the number one overall pick if that's the
Absolutely,
case.
yeah. And who knows where he's
the
going to
Heisman
be
Trophy
picked. You
winner.
hear a lot
He's
of
Probably
really killing it,
maybe
yeah.
the Heisman Trophy winner.
I agree.